I mean, Dad, did y'all go on the 8-mile run last night? Yeah. Well, we'll try and make up for it and double it tonight. All right, you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Eisen, the last entry that we were talking about of your visit with Mr. Reinking was the July 18th, 2018. And in between those dates, Dr. Kovacs did an individual session on the 23rd. And then your next session with Mr. Reinking was on July 25th of 2018. Is that correct? It's definitely the next session that you noted in your report.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in that session, you attempted to administer the Spectra test, but he again refused. Is that right?
Yes.
And that session, you don't talk about the actual shooting itself, but you do kind of talk to him about the harassment that he's described. Is that right?
Yes.
And Mr. Reinking began by stating that these people were hacking into my computer, so that was against federal law, and they were breaking into my apartment. So I didn't know what was happening next, so I feared for my life. Which then you questioned him about why he would fear for his life. And he replied that he received death threats on the internet through messages, and he said one of those messages was a video that appeared on his YouTube recommended list and had a Navy SEAL who said, "I'd probably just sneak into your apartment in the middle of the night and slit your throat or something." Now that is the first time he's mentioned death threats, correct?
Correct.
And so that was on your 4th session, and he referenced it and that it was a YouTube video, correct?
Correct.
And no mention of Waffle House connected to that in any way, correct?
Correct.
And he goes on, and you kind of ask him about the harassment, and he tells you that they also made attempts to poison him at a Waffle House in Caryville, Tennessee. Mr. Reinking stated the food tasted a little different. The cook was acting shady with the way he was taking the food out. And he explained he watched the cook take his hash browns out of a different refrigerator than the one where he got the hash browns for all the other customers. And so that is his explanation about Waffle House attempting to poison him. Is that right?
Yes.
And so the sum total of that was that the food tasted a little different. Correct?
Yes, that's what he reported on that day.
And so then you questioned him of why would he keep going back to the Waffle House if he was having these issues, which is a logical question. And he responded to you that he thought the Waffle House in Nashville would be different. And then you asked him why he continued to go to the Waffle House in Nashville after he believed he was being targeted by the staff, which again, I guess that goes back to the repeating things that were from his journal on his personal computer. Is that right?
Yes.
And he responded that it was practical to go there. How is that freedom when you have to avoid certain places just because you're being stalked? And that is what Mr. Reinking expressed about how he felt about going to that Waffle House in Nashville. Is that correct?
Yes.
And after that session with Mr. Reinking, that was on the 25th, you met with him on the 26th of July, which that's not in your 10-15-18 report, but you have an individual progress note, which again, you don't specifically talk about the Waffle House or the shooting, but in that session with him, you're asking him about why he wants to talk to the media. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And specifically, Mr. Reinking had called Nick Barris with Channel 5 News. And that's what you were asking him about. Is that right?
Yes.
Which I know that you did not have all of the journal entries back then, but since in the last few weeks you have received all the journal entries. And so you are aware that Mr. Reinking had described in a May 20th, 2017 journal entry, he had described sniping people at a Nelly concert and what vantage point he would take to do that. And he described his 30 6 sniper rifle that he was going to pick people off. Do you remember reading that journal entry?
I do.
And in that journal entry, he said, I'm sure people would wonder why I did it, and then I would have writing and notes to explain it all. I would have people that I called out for help when no one did a damn thing. And you have since read his May 26, 2017 journal entry. Do you recall that he wrote, I want to write the book in a way that makes other people question my sanity because I question it myself. Do you recall that?
Yes.
So May 26, 2017, he is setting up for people to question his sanity. Correct?
Correct.
And then May 28th, 2017 journal entry, Mr. Reinking says, I want to start shooting cops, trying to plan this as best I can, have as much impact as I can. Hopefully I will have my book out by then and I would become a martyr. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Which again, you did not have that information in your hands to review at the time. The next time that you meet with him, actually Dr. Kovacs meets with him on that same day, that July 26, 2018, and then you meet with him on July 30th, 2018. Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall that.
Which you talked to him about the messages from God, and you included the majority of the information from your individual session in the 10, 15, 18 report, but there was one thing that he said that you did not include. It's in your individual note, that Mr. Reinking reported that there have been a lot of times when he received instructions from God but did not comply. Do you recall him saying that?
Yes.
And he also refused any testing that day as well. Now, I believe that you actually met with him on 8/1, but in that meeting you don't discuss anything about the shooting or the messages or anything like that. Now, Dr. Kovacs meets with him twice before your next meeting. He meets with him on July 31st, 2018 and on August 2nd, 2018. So your last meeting with Mr. Reinking on August 6, 2018, you are questioning him about the incident and the messages, and in that meeting you were asking him if anyone knew about his plans to shoot the individuals at the Waffle House, and he said that he wrote it on his computer or he spoke it out loud in his apartment, and he made it clear so they knew, which you questioned him about that because he wasn't sure, and he told you he could not remember if he said it out loud or wrote it down. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So again, you're questioning him about a lot of the details of what he said up to this point. And you specifically ask him if it would make sense for the victims to have weapons. And that wasn't something where he said something and you ask a follow-up question. You specifically ask him if it would make sense for the victims to have weapons. And he responded to you and said they had weapons, electronic weapons. They created cognitive dissonance. And so you followed up with a question, if the electronic weapons could be used as a defense against a rifle, because that's what Mr. Reinking had. And his response was, I wouldn't recommend that. So you kind of prompted him of whether or not the victims had some threat to him, and his response back to you was they did not, correct?
Correct.
He also told you that he had previously thought about shooting the people targeting before that date, which again, you now know that from the journal entries, that he had multiple entries where he was referencing his plans for a mass shooting, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Reinking said that God had told him to do other things before, but he could not provide examples after being asked multiple times. So you were asking him for example, give me an example, give me an example, and Mr. Reinking could not. Is that right?
Right.
And then he said, again, he's talking about this incident and this message from God, and he said, I only had to shoot 3 people, but I didn't think about it at the time, but I guess I could have brought a paintball gun. Something less final. Dr. Eisen, you would agree that Mr. Reinking's statement of something less final indicates that he understood the nature of his conduct, correct?
Correct.
It indicates that he understood the wrongfulness of his conduct, correct?
I'm not sure that indicates that.
You're not sure that someone no longer being alive would indicate wrongfulness after being shot?
Not if he believed it was in self-defense, no.
Well, self-defense, we've got hash browns that taste a little bit different right now. Right?
Correct.
People saying things that he wrote in his journal. And what he wrote in his journal was that he was planning a mass shooting. Right, Dr. Eisen?
Correct.
Okay. Now that paintball gun reference, did that ring a bell with you?
Yes.
Because again, this command from God was no longer to kill anyone. Now it might be a paintball gun. You know that previously he said he might have supposed to have been shooting a camera. That Mr. Reinking has completely backed off of everything that he told you, correct?
I don't think he backed off. I think he originally told me it was to shoot, not to kill.
Well, he originally told you he was supposed to get a gun. He didn't tell you which one.
Correct.
And he chose a Bushmaster's XM15 and took 90 rounds of ammunition with him, right?
Right.
Okay. He goes on and said that some people may argue that it was the devil communicating with him, but he knew it was God because God is love and the devil is hate and fear. We're given the knowledge of good and evil. Dr. Eisen, you would agree that Mr. Reinking's weighing of good and evil indicates that he understands the wrongfulness of his conduct, correct?
Not of his conduct, but it does indicate he understands the concept of wrongfulness, yes.
So he understands the concept of wrongfulness. Then you go on to ask him, is a very important question, when asked what would have happened if he did not shoot the victims, what would have happened if he did not shoot the victims? He said, then these people would have kept terrorizing me and I would have left the country. But they said, we'll just follow you there. I think that's why God told me to do it, because these people wouldn't have stopped. It could have gone on for 10 years. So the bad tasting hash browns, the people repeating things he said in his journal, the toilet seat being up, the bathroom door being open or closed, that could have gone on for maybe 10 years until he's 39. That was his response to you, correct?
He didn't specify those things, but he did say the 10 years, yes.
And all those things are the things that he's been talking about with the harassment, right?
Correct.
So you did not stop there. You said, when asked what God would have done if he did not shoot the victims. What would God have done if you disobeyed him? He said, probably just found another way for me to have peace and success in life. Mr. Reinking told you there was no consequence, correct?
Correct.
Now, Dr. Eisen, you've already testified that you worked with Dr. Kovacs in this evaluation of Mr. Reinking, right?
Yes.
And you are aware that Dr. Kovacs met with Mr. Reinking individually on July 23rd, 2018, right?
Yes.
And you would have reviewed that session before completing your report.
Correct.
And so you are aware that Mr. Reinking told Dr. Kovacs on July 23rd, 2018, that he had had enough of it that night, and he went there to get revenge. You are aware that that is what Mr. Reinking told Dr. Kovacs, correct?
Correct.
And in Dr. Kovacs' last meeting with Mr. Reinking, after having met with him on 4 separate occasions, you are aware that Dr. Kovacs' report indicates that Mr. Reinking's mental state at the time of the charges is looking more and more like he had an appreciation of the wrongfulness of his criminal actions, but was acting out of revenge, and that there was not a compelling basis for his lack of appreciation of the wrongfulness, as he has been inconsistent in regard to hearing a voice, to knowing the alleged crimes were wrong, but that God told him to do it, to it being thoughts in his imagination telling him to commit the violent acts. You reviewed that, correct?
Correct.
And again, on July 23rd, 2018, Mr. Reinking said, I had had enough of it that night, and I went there to get revenge. Correct?
Correct.
I don't have any other questions.
Read the record.
Good afternoon, Dr. Eisen.
Hello again.
So, you were just asked about Dr. Kovacs. So, you worked with Dr. Kovacs at MTMHI, correct?
Correct.
He collaborated, I think you said earlier, on your evaluations of Mr. Reinking.
Yes.
And just to be clear, you did a collaborative report with Mr. Kovacs, or Dr. Kovacs, pardon me, August 9th,
Yes.
2018, correct?
Correct.
Into that report, it has your signature, right?
Yes.
Dr. Kovacs' signature.
Correct.
And at that point in time, and there's been all this conversation from the state, like, you know, you didn't have this and you made this opinion, you didn't have that, you made this other opinion. At that point in time, you did a report that said you basically were waiting for additional information to confirm your opinion as to whether or not Mr. Reinking could appreciate wrongfulness, right?
Yes.
And you continued to evaluate Mr. Reinking, correct?
Correct.
Now, Dr. Kovacs, did he continue to meet with Mr. Reinking?
He did.
Okay. And you said collaborative. Even though Dr. Kovacs didn't write the October report, the October 18, 2018 report, he reviewed it, didn't he?
Yes.
He even adopted it, didn't he?
Yes.
He signed it.
Correct.
And in that report, was it the collective opinion of both you and Dr. Kovacs that Travis Reinking could not appreciate that what he was doing was wrong on the night of April 22nd, 2018?
Yes.
Now, does Dr. Kovacs typically sign reports in your experience with him that he disagrees with?
No.
Would he have done that, that you know of?
Objection, Your Honor,
It's the same.
Have you ever known him to do it?
I have not.
Okay. You can answer.
I have not.
Okay. And y'all had discussions about the final. Y'all meet and talk about the ultimate opinion that you have.
Yes.
Did you in this particular instance meet with Dr. Kovich?
Yes.
Now, you guys are not the head folks over at MT Mitch, I would assume, right? You have
Correct.
a supervisor, correct?
Yes.
Who's that?
Joe Mount.
Okay. And is there somebody at there named Dr. Fights?
Yes, he's in our central office.
Okay. And was he consulted on the opinion?
Yes,
Did he concur in the opinion as well?
he did.
Now, there was a lot said about, I guess the state tried to insinuate that you had failed to disclose, or I guess adequately disclose, that Mr. Reinking had refused testing. Could you turn in your report 8/9/2018, just to refresh your recollection? Page 4. And it's the first full paragraph, second sentence, if you could read that through. Related to testing.
You said page 4?
Yes, of your August 9th, 2018 report.
Are you talking about toward the bottom?
No, first full paragraph at the top.
First
Is
full
there,
paragraph at the top. Okay.
did you
Oh.
state that although he refused psychological testing, he was cooperative and talkative during clinical interviews?
Yes.
Or, excuse me, although he refused most psychological testing.
Right.
All right, so that's in your report.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you were asked about videos that whether you would watch the video from outside the Waffle House. Did Travis Reinking himself describe to you what he did outside the Waffle House?
Yes.
And just to be clear, you don't have the authority to go into some police file or detective's files and take information when you're working on a particular case at the request of the court, do you?
Right.
You, like in this case, do you have to request the discovery materials
Yes.
from the state?
Yes.
Did you do that?
Yes.
And it's their responsibility to give you whatever they want to look at, right?
Correct.
So you were asked about the video. You said that you didn't watch the outside. Let me ask you this. The fact that you didn't watch what happened on the outside of that video, does that in any way change your opinion as to Mr. Reinking's ability to appreciate wrongfulness on April 22nd, 2018?
No.
Does it in any way affect your opinion that he suffers from schizophrenia, severe mental illness?
No.
Okay. You were asked about witness statements. Did you, if you didn't review witness statements at one point, either audioed or typed?
No.
Remember that? And but you requested all the pertinent information, the discovery from the state, right?
Correct.
And you heard Ms. Norman say something earlier about how you would have known that you were doing this so that the state can make a decision about charging or something. You remember that question she asked?
I do.
Did she have every opportunity to send you whatever she wanted you to look at?
Yes.
And did you receive witness statements, audio or otherwise?
No.
Because she actually sent you information, didn't she?
Yes.
She sent you these journals
Correct.
and emailed them over to you and wanted you to review them.
Correct.
And I know there was some issue, but you ultimately reviewed them, correct?
Yes.
And there was some talk about additional information that you reviewed even in the past, 3 weeks, correct?
Yes.
And that included that big stack, or did that include that big stack of journals that she wanted you to read?
Yes.
You were also provided a bunch of videos. We talked about that earlier here recently, correct?
Correct.
And you reviewed those, correct?
Correct.
After reviewing what the state asked you to review, after reviewing the additional materials provided you by the video and the videos that were provided by the defense, did that change your opinion about whether or not Mr. Reinking appreciated that what he was doing was wrong on April 22nd, 2018?
It did not.
Did it have an effect on your opinion? Did it strengthen it?
I believe there was information in there to strengthen it, yes.
In both the information that the state gave you and the videos, correct?
Correct.
Now, did Mr. Reinking get advance notice while he was an inpatient at MTMHI during the evaluation about what tests you would be doing and when?
No.
Did you have any indication from all of you've reviewed interactions with Mr. Reinking and the testing you did that Mr. Reinking was malingering?
No.
Now, during the time that you're evaluating Mr. Reinking, was he, in your opinion, severely mentally ill?
Yes.
Was he, at that time, experiencing hallucinations,
Yes.
delusions,
Yes.
disorganized thinking?
Yes.
And could you see that other than just the self-report of Mr. Reinking by your own observations?
Yes.
You were asked a whole lot about general concepts of right and wrong. Regardless of general concepts of right and wrong, I want to ask you specifically as to Mr. Reinking. On the night of April 22nd, 2018, could he appreciate that what he was doing in going into that Waffle House and opening fire, could he appreciate that that was wrong?
I don't believe so.
Did he believe what he was doing was self-defense?
Yes, I believe so.
So, and in one of your interviews with Mr. Reinking, regarding his belief of self-defense, didn't he in fact say that any logical person would see that what I did was self-defense?
Yes.
And was it your opinion that his plan had no basis in reality, but was based on his delusional thinking about the CIA, the FBI, aliens, and others involved in a conspiracy to harass and harm him?
Yes.
And that's a statement, that's not a statement made, that particular one was made to you during an interview with Mr. Reinking, correct?
Correct.
Now, these meetings with Mr. Reinking, are they intended to be interrogations?
No.
So you were asked, well, did he say this in this meeting, but he didn't say it in that meeting? How are these conducted? What's the point?
The point is to get as much information from him about what he was thinking during and prior to and after, immediately following the crimes.
Are you attempting to get every fact known to Mr. Reinking out in each and every meeting?
No.
And when you're reviewing the facts, if he further elaborates, or someone further elaborates or gives more detail to something they've already talked about, are you sitting there thinking, oh, that's absolutely a lie now, that's inconsistent, he didn't tell me that last time?
No, that's pretty common for people telling stories, like telling about something that happened previously.
And again, what effect does this disorganized thinking that he's experiencing have on his ability to sit down and engage in these conversations in a logical way?
It has a negative effect on it. He doesn't have the same kind of coherent linear thoughts that someone without psychosis would have.
Now, the prosecutor asked you some questions about, well, the toilet seat and moving things around. But even in your 7/25/2018 meeting with Mr. Reinking, did he in fact say, I feared for my life?
Yes.
Now, from your meetings with Mr. Reinking, did he perceive this as just someone like someone lives in the house with you leaving the toilet seat up?
No.
What was his perception of what was happening?
He indicated his perception was that someone was breaking in to mess with him and might cause harm to him.
Now you were asked about flight. This idea that Mr. Reinking, after the shooting, left. Now you opined about that specifically in your report.
Correct.
And just to refresh your recollection, go to page 10 of 10 of your 10/15/2018 report. And right towards the top of the page, after the three little I section down there, you have a sentence that said it should be noted. Can you read that to yourself?
Read it to myself?
Just read it. Are you familiar with what it says?
Yes.
Okay. What does it say?
You want me to read it out loud this time?
Yeah.
Okay. He said it should be noted that evading arrest is often a sign that the person understands the wrongfulness of his or her actions. However, due to Mr. Reinking's belief that the police were part of a conspiracy against him, parentheses, corroborated by the recording of his phone call to a dispatcher, it is logical that he would run from the police.
And this phone call to the dispatcher, are you referencing some of the materials you reviewed earlier where Mr. Reinking called the police to try to report what was happening to him?
Yes.
And in that phone call, does he indicate he believes they're in on it?
Yes.
Now, I want to go back to your interview with Mr. Reinking from 7/30 of 2018. Now, you were asked a lot about outside the Waffle House. Okay? you recall Mr. Reinking, and there's a part in here where he says they sent a man to the Waffle House to turn on his hazard lights. You remember that?
Yes.
And do you recall, and if you need to look, that's fine too, but do you recall what was significant for Mr. Reinking about the gentleman with the hazard lights?
I know that he reported that he believed that individual was taunting him. Was there something else you were referring to?
Right. And was there something about the number 3 that Mr. Reinking referenced right after that?
I'm sorry, what page of the report are you on?
Let's see. Give me just a second. Page 7. Your 7:30 interview with Mr. Reinking.
So would this be in the August report?
No, in the October report.
Page 7 of the October report.
Oh, pardon me. And the judge was accurate. I went to
Okay,
a
the
different
other
report.
report.
Page 7 of the 8/6/18 report. I apologize.
Glad to restore my reputation.
Yes.
Page 7, the August 9th report. All right?
Yes. And do you recall, and just without the report, let's do it like this. Do
okay.
you recall Mr. Reinking talking to you about the number 3?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said the number 3 has had special significance to him, including the Holy Trinity, him and his 2 wives. He sent 333 Starbursts to Taylor Swift?
Okay. And did he recall seeing that number as the night on April 22nd, 2018?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the district attorney asked you some questions about in the August 6, 2018 interview with Mr. Reinking about his statements about having previously thought about shooting the people targeting him before the date of the offense. So if you could look at again, in the October report, bottom of page 7. It's your 8/6/2018 interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Very bottom of the paragraph. Bottom of the page.
Mm-hmm.
Did Mr. Reinking give an explanation for why he had not previously acted on these thoughts about shooting people targeting him?
He stated, quote, "Yeah, I thought about it, but I never had the validation from God.
And what's the next sentence say?
If he tells me this is what you got to do, then I'm going to go do it."
And then the district attorney had asked you this last part about Mr. Reinking said that God told him to do other things before, but he could not provide examples. Now, go to the middle of the paragraph on page 8 from that same
Okay.
interaction. All right. Have
Okay.
you read through that? Did Mr. Reinking state that he felt angry about people harassing him?
Yes.
Did he also, in that same sentence, make a statement about the actions at the Waffle House?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said, but I would have never done it unless God told me to do it.
Now, that same paragraph down at the bottom, again, the district attorneys characterized this in toilet seats and moving of files. But how did Mr. Reinking perceive it? In his words, if he hadn't have followed God's direction on April 22nd, 2018, in his own mind, they would have kept doing what to him?
He said terrorizing him.
From your interactions with Mr. Reinking, did he perceive what was happening to him in some small way, or did it appear to be terrifying him?
It appeared to be terrifying him.
You've watched these videos, 30 plus videos, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
And in those videos, are you able to, is it Mr. Reinking and a lot of them just talking into the camera?
Yes.
And from the videos that you watched, is it the case that Mr. Reinking started doing that to document what he perceived was happening to him to hope to get help?
Yes, that's what he reported in the videos.
Do you see him talking about what's happening, what he perceives is happening in his mind?
Yes.
How does he look?
He looks very agitated. He looks scared at a lot of points.
And when you're in a situation when you're trying to determine what's going on with someone, when you're asked by the court to talk about wrongfulness and serious mental disease on a certain date, how important is it for you to be able to look back and see a history of behavior?
It's very important in determining that the person actually had a mental illness prior to reporting it to us during the evaluation.
Isn't it true that Mr. Reinking is repeatedly, regardless of whether it's been all in the same interaction, insisted that he was justified in what he did because he was defending himself?
Yes.
And you were asked a lot about these journals. I want you to turn to page 9 of that same October report.
Okay.
And it is referenced in a paragraph numbered 6 on that page.
Okay.
Can you read that?
Yeah, it says that in a journal entry on January 14th, 2018, he stated, quote, "If I continue to feel threatened and endangered by these people and I take action to defend myself, then I will be doing the right thing," end quote.
And that was from those same journals that the state was having you reference and walk through, correct?
Correct.
So, based on your review of all this information, everything you reviewed, at the time you were meeting with Mr. Reinking, through today's date, all the videos, regardless of any general concepts of right and wrong, could Travis Reinking, did he understand that what he did on April 22nd, 2018 was wrong?
It is my opinion that he did not.
One moment. There's one other thing. You were asked about a statement. Let me find it here. Page 5. I'm going to clear this up. You were asked about a statement that was in your interview with Mr. Reinking on July 18th, 2018. And specifically, there was language that was read in earlier. It says, then I remember just feeling like I was going to throw up because I was like, this is something that God told me to do, but it seems evil. You remember that?
Yes.
And there was a point at which with the prosecutor, and I'm not going to repeat the word, but read the N word. Right?
I read it.
An inaccurate statement.
It's-
Same read.
Well, there was a point at which, after that, she said it seemed foreboding, and then there were two guys outside, and one guy outside yelled something like
Yes.
what? Like O-S-H-I-T,
Yes.
that N-word's dead, right?
Correct.
That wasn't Mr. Reinking. When he said that, that wasn't him saying he said that, was it?
No, he was saying that someone else said that.
Those are my questions.
Rick Roll?
Yes, Your Honor. Which, Dr. Eisen, that was Mr. Reinking speaking that phrase to you. That wasn't anyone else, correct?
Yes, he was.
He said that word.
Yes, he was repeating what he said. He heard someone else say. Yes.
Okay. And you just testified that you said seeing the video of Mr. Reinking gunning down Joe Perez Jr. and Torian Sonderland would have no effect on your opinion.
I don't think that's what I said.
So it would have an effect on your opinion.
I can't say that if I've never seen it. He said.
Exactly. You haven't seen that video.
Judge, she needs to let her respond. She's cutting her off.
I thought she did, but go ahead. Just be careful about cutting in before the answer's complete.
You haven't seen that video, Dr. Eisen, correct?
Correct.
So if you just testified on redirect that it would not affect your opinion, that is not a true statement, is it?
I did not say that.
Okay, because you cannot say that.
Correct. I can't say that for sure.
Surveillance video was provided by our office. You were not able to play all of the files.
It was not provided by your office. It was provided by Dr. Woods. I did not get it from your office.
Okay.
I had to ask her for it.
Dr. Woods got it from our office, and she gave it to you.
Correct.
No one else had access to that video in July of 2018. It was just Dr. Wood and you. And you only watched the video from the inside of the Waffle House.
Yes, me or my IT department cannot get it to work.
And so you are here today testifying under oath about your opinion about whether or not Mr. Reinking could appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct when he killed Joe Perez Jr. That is what you are here testifying about. And you have not seen that video of the actual act, correct?
Correct.
And you are here testifying today about Travis Reinking gunning down Torian Sonderland, striking him 7 times. And you have not viewed that video, correct?
Correct.
You didn't see him take that assault rifle and train it on him as Torian ran from him, have you?
No.
But you are here giving your expert opinion today, Dr. Eisen, are you not?
I am.
And you are fully aware that Travis Reinking made this statement that he was going to punish them by taking something they couldn't take back, some of their own lives. You are aware that Travis Reinking said that, correct?
Correct.
And you are aware that he said he did this for revenge, aren't you?
Yes.
No question.
Thank you, John. You may step down.
Maybe take a 10-minute recess.
Pardon?
Maybe take a 10-minute recess.
All right. Remember, Jerry, we're going to take a short recess, please. Do not discuss anything about the case. Keep your thoughts to yourself and remain open-minded.
There's been closing up with stuff. Leave the chair to follow me, please.
You need to address the court. Your Honor, I want to ask for a recess because that's going to conclude our proof, and we are going to, we are prepared
Do
to
the
do.
moment hearing.
Yeah, we're prepared to do that hearing. We have a signed waiver, and so I thought the court might want to do that before we stand up and say that we rest.
Yeah, definitely. So we can get Mr. Reinking to come around.
Did you raise your right hand, Mr. Ring? You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
All right, come around, Mr. Reinking. They're not gonna ask you anything about the case itself. They're just gonna ask you about some decisions that you may or may, that you may have made. As it relates to whether or not you're going to testify.
Mr. Reinking, have we discussed your right to testify at this trial if you want to?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand that you have the right not to testify, and that if you choose not to testify, the jury may not draw any inference from your failure to testify? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Right. And do you understand that you have the right to testify, and that if you wish to exercise that right, no one can stop you from testifying? Do you understand that?
I understand.
Okay. And have you consulted with your lawyers in making the decision as to whether or not you want to testify?
I have.
Okay. And have we advised, that your lawyers advised you of the advantages and disadvantages of testifying?
Yes.
And after considering your rights and asking any questions that you had regarding those rights, do you voluntarily and personally choose to waive your right to testify?
I do.
Okay. And then you recall we signed on a piece of paper earlier going over all that with you. Do you recall that?
I recall.
Okay.
All right, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Reinking. You may step down. Yeah, that's it. Are you ready to proceed with the rebuttal? If you're gonna have rebuttal, I guess I should ask that first.
Yes, Your Honor. If we have just a few minutes.
Yeah, let's take about 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes or so. Get them lined up.